Author of 5 books, father of 3 kids, husband of 1 wife, says Dan Pink's Twitter bio. Behind his funny, self-deprecating humor is a genius. He is the author of 5 provocative books, including the long-running New York Times bestsellers A Whole New Mind and Drive. His latest book, To Sell is Human, is a #1 New York Times business bestseller, a #1 Wall Street Journal business bestseller, and a #1 Washington Post nonfiction bestseller. Dan's books have been translated into 34 languages and have sold more than 2 million copies worldwide. In 2013, Thinkers 50 named him one of the top 15 business thinkers in the world. We had a chance to sit down with him in Toronto during his visit to the prestigious Rotman School of Management. We asked him some questions about how his lessons can help us serve differently in pharma.
Hi, my name is Jill Donahue. I'm the author of EngageRx, and I'm thrilled to be sitting across from Dan Pink today here at the Rotman School of Management at the University of Toronto. Dan, thank you so much for taking a few minutes to chat with us.
My pleasure.
You are about to go downstairs to a sold-out audience to talk to them about the surprising truths of moving other people, and I'm really glad that you could stop and talk to us about moving people as it relates to our world of pharma.
Sure.
I work with pharma professionals who have an incredible opportunity to make a big difference in your life and my life and our families' lives with the life-saving medications that they choose. And when I discovered your books and started watching you on video, I wished that every pharma person could read what you've written and see you talk. So, for example, in your book, Drive, The Surprising Truth About What Motivates Us, you talk about autonomy, mastery, and purpose.
Right.
So could we zoom in on purpose a little bit? So in pharma, it's not hard for us to see the purpose and how we can impact lives. How important do you think it is for pharma professionals and leaders in pharma to get in touch with our purpose?
I think it's enormously important, but while we zoom in on purpose, let me zoom out for a second and explain those autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Basically, what the research shows pretty clearly is that if you want sophisticated performance at work, if you want engagement at work, what you have to do is you have to pay people enough, pay people well, pay people fairly, and then offer them a measure of control over their work, chance to get better, and a sense of purpose. And that purpose, I think, is really important. But purpose, I think, has 2 dimensions. And one of them is very easy for pharma, and one of them, I think, is a little bit more concealed. So we can think of it as purpose with a capital P. Purpose with a capital P is purpose, okay? We're saving lives, we're transforming the world. And I think that pharma has that baked into a lot of what it does. What I've seen in organizations where that isn't a stretch is that a lot of times they don't talk about it enough. They don't bring it to the surface. And so having a few more conversations about that is enormously important. Day to day, there's another aspect of purpose that matters, and you can think of that as purpose with a small p, which is essentially an individual understanding why his or her work actually matters. Why does it contribute? Why is it necessary? Why are things better because you are there? And I think that in any organizations, the capital P and small p purpose are essential. I think with pharma, you got the capital P right there. You might need some work, as all organizations do, on the small p.
Yeah, what we find is that most pharma companies now get it, that they need to put the patient in their vision and mission. But it's a different thing to go from saying what you're about to actually doing it. Right? So do you have any ideas for the leaders? One of the things that they're talking to me about right now is that we want to change our incentive and bonus system, which I think is brilliant. What recommendations do you have for them on, we used to have a system where we paid incentive based on sales. Right? And the research that you've shared about mechanical, what would you recommend to people that are considering changing that bonus structure?
Yeah, I think it's a really tough one, especially in pharma, partly because of the financing system in healthcare, both in Canada and in the United States, which makes it a very different kind of industry than any other industry that there is out there. What we need to understand is this: that certain kinds of there's nothing inherently evil about sales commissions. I think the key is to challenge the orthodoxy that that's the only way that sales professionals can be motivated. And one of the things you're seeing in a whole range of industries, including pharma, is that the work of a salesperson is less mechanical. It's less about filling orders. It's much more akin in many ways to being a management consultant. How can I help this health system save money? How can I give them a regime that allows them to help their patients at a reasonable cost? And so what the research shows pretty clearly for that kind of more conceptual creative work, if-then incentives, controlling contingent incentives, if you do this, then you get that, don't work that well. And so at some level, I can see a move, and I think it's happening already, to treat people in pharma, particularly in the explicit sales function, more like management consultants and less like people who are taking orders and ringing the cash register.
Right. Awesome, and I hope it moves in that direction too. And the research that you shared on that, really.
And I think that as a practical matter, some organizations are moving that way.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly, obviously, I know I'm not an American, so I know the United States healthcare system better. But you have, even in the way that pharma reps in the U.S., pharma reps are having a harder time even getting into seeing doctors.
Yes.
Because then doctors themselves, in the U.S. especially, are actually somewhat less autonomous than they've been in recent years. They're often the employees of a larger health system. And the people who are making the decision are not necessarily, some of the big decisions aren't necessarily the doctors, but someone in another office who is coming up with the whole list of acceptable medicines that doctors in that system can prescribe. So it's a great degree of complexity, very, very consultative, and if-then bonuses often don't work too well for that kind of work.
Yeah, and when we look back to our history, it was originally the detail man. It reminds me of your Fuller Brush story man, right? It was the detail man that was sent out by the pharma company to go out and take the information to the healthcare professionals because they couldn't get it anywhere else.
Right.
So now, in this information era, you write about that in To Sell is Human. When you turn the ABCs, always be closing, you turn them on their head to attunement, buoyancy, and clarity. So how would you apply that lesson to the pharma person, the need to change the always be closing?
Oh, yeah. But I mean, I think if you look at the new ABCs, which are attunement, which is perspective taking, buoyancy, which is staying afloat in an ocean of rejection, and clarity, I think they make perfect sense. I think attunement is especially important. What you have to do is you have to understand in this complex system, what are everyone's interests? What's their perspective on things? What do they care about? And that's enormously important. And well, it's the patient's perspective, it's the health system's perspective, it's the physician's perspective. Having a sense of the perspective of all the players in the system and what their interests are is enormously important. That's a complex undertaking.
Yes.
That's just not, sign on the line that is dotted. That's not twisting the arm or backing people into a corner. And then with clarity, as you mentioned, Jill, it's enormously important because we live in a world of, awash in information. So it used to be, as you say, the detail man, usually a man. Detail man was the person who had the access to the information. When the person with access to the when you have access to the information that no one has, you've got a comparative advantage. When everybody has the access to the information, and there's a huge amount of information, the premium doesn't come from access, it comes from essentially a curatorial function. How do you distill that information, separate that information, use your expertise to make sense of that information? And so those things, I think, become enormously important in any kind of profession, but particularly this. And again, I think that a lot of times the conventional view gives short shrift to the complexity of pharma. Not only does a person have to be an expert in the drug, here are the molecules we're working with, here's how they work in the body, here's what the research says about it, but you also have to be an expert in the system into which you're selling it, which both in the US and Canada are among the most complex business and organizational systems that we have.
Yeah, absolutely. And our industry has been in decline for about the last 10 years. So often when people are in decline, they get panicked. So I'm having clients call me to say, we need to go back to basics. Can you come and teach them to close and to close harder?
Yeah.
So what would you say to that?
I would say if you can come up with a way, you're not seeing it from, you're seeing it from your perspective, not from their perspective. And you're going to be better off seeing the problem from their perspective. What can you do to make their life easier? What can you do to identify a problem they don't know that you have? That's going to that's going to lead to closing. But this aggressive move to close, you know, I'm not making a moral case about this. All I'm saying is that it's just not that effective.
It's not going to work.
Right.
Yeah. You are about to go downstairs to greet us oversold audience. What would be the one thing that you're hoping that they'll walk away with today that they might do differently after hearing you speak today?
Well, I mean, I think when it comes to this topic of selling, moving, and persuasion, there are a couple of things. Number one, we do it all the time. And number two, you can do it in a way where you don't have to be a sleazebag. You can do it in a way that is honorable and humane. And in fact, you're better off doing it that way because not only can you sleep at night, but you're going to be more effective.
Yeah, turning influence and persuasion into good things.
Right.
And Dan, I'm looking forward to seeing whatever is next for you. What are you most excited about coming down the road? What will we see next from you?
In November, I have a new television show coming out on National Geographic Channel.
Awesome.
It's what I think is the first primetime television show about behavioral science. So we've
You
gone
did
off.
it just for me. Excellent. I'll be
We've gone
front and
off.
center.
We've gone off for the last 6 months. I've been working with an incredibly talented team of people where we're doing small behavioral science experiments around
Awesome.
North America and then seeing how people react to them.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait.
Crowd Control coming up in November.
And where will we find that?
National Geographic Channel,
Awesome.
which is probably channel 468 on your cable
Who
system.
knows? I'll definitely be
Yeah.
looking up though, and I'll be watching for sure. Thank you
Thanks.
so much,
Thanks
and
for-
good luck this afternoon.
Thanks, Jill.